Why aren't you getting ahead at work?
The company needs a man in this position.
Now we're getting at it. I lose a promotion because of some idiot prejudice.
While today's biases might not be this outright, there might be a subtle reason you're struggling to get to the next step in your career. And no, it doesn't have to do with
The glass ceiling.
Glass ceiling.
Glass ceiling.
We've been so obsessed with breaking the glass ceiling, but how many of us have ever stopped to ask, what if we aren't even getting on the ladder in the first place? It's all because of this concept called the broken rung. This is the point on the career ladder where many women are falling behind. But it's not at the top, it's that very first step into management. That's right, women are disproportionately missing out on that very first promotion from entry level to manager. This phenomenon was explained recently in the book The Broken Rung by Quaylen Ellengrud, Lorena Yee, and Maria Del Mar Martinez. In other words, the first step up is broken, preventing many women from ever reaching higher leadership roles. It's not just about one foregone promotion. It's about how early inequality snowballs into underrepresentation in the C-suite. So let's say 100 men get promoted from entry level to manager. Only 81 women get that same bump. For Latinas, it drops to 65. For Black women, 54. But why is this happening? It can be tempting to dismiss these stats with explanations like women lack ambition or that they're choosing to build families instead of building careers. So let's play a round of broken rung myth busting. Myth number 1. It's a pipeline issue. There just aren't enough qualified women. What if men are just more qualified for these management positions, huh? Haven't you thought of that? Well, yes, and let's take a look at the data. Women have been graduating from college at higher rates than men for decades now, over 40 years in fact. In the US, women now earn about 59% of bachelor's degrees, 63% of master's degrees, and 57% of doctorates. Plenty of women are entering professional fields with strong qualifications. They land entry-level jobs in large numbers. Many industries hire women at parity or better in junior roles. Basically, the pipeline is there. There are plenty of qualified women. The leak is in the internal promotion process. When it comes to promotions, only half of our earning potential comes from the skills we brought with us from our schooling. The other half, more on that later. So this myth, mostly busted. Then, what's causing the broken rung if it's not a qualification issue? Myth number 2, women lack ambition. So if there are plenty of qualified women at the entry level, maybe they're just not ambitious enough for the management positions, and that's why they're not getting promoted. Well, 70% of both men and women say they want to be promoted to the next level, and ambition is even higher among young women. 9 in 10 millennial and Gen Z women want to move up, with most aspiring to senior leadership over time. So on average, women do want to advance in their careers and do have high ambitions. This myth is busted. But does that change as we age? That brings us to myth number 3. Women naturally step back when they start building families. The old baby barrier theory. It's true that women disproportionately shoulder caregiving responsibilities, but blaming the broken rung on motherhood is misleading. The reality? The biggest promotion gap occurs at the entry level, before motherhood is even a factor for many women. The average age of moms giving birth in the US hit nearly 30 years old in 2023, according to the CDC. That gives on average 9 years of career growth before having kids, giving women plenty of time to get to that first promotion before children. But what about later, when some women do take maternity leave or scale back for a short period? It's important to put this in context. Some research by McKinsey finds that a typical woman works about 8.6 years for every 10 a man works, accounting for more career breaks or part-time stints. That means that men on average get about 17 extra months a decade of career experience, which can certainly influence promotions. So while raising children is a factor, it doesn't fully explain the broken rung promotion gap, which appears even among women who are continuously employed. And let's be real, no one ever asks whether men with kids are too distracted for leadership. In fact, fathers are actually rewarded for having kids. This myth, honestly, it feels semi-busted, but it is true that systemic barriers are currently in place that don't necessarily support a woman's ability to return to work with success. But also, it's not our fault that women get penalized for having children versus the men who somehow get rewarded for the same thing. So who's to say if women would be stepping back at all if we had the proper support in place to help working moms continue to thrive in their careers? In summary, women's stalled advancement is not entirely due to lack of ambition, personal life choices, or a shortage of educated women. These are myths that let organizations off the hook. So let's talk about these structures. What are the other barriers causing the broken rung? The first is probably obvious. It's biases. There are tons of biases that play into everyone's everyday life, but let's focus on one for now. Women often face biases, subtle or otherwise, otherwise in how their performance is reviewed. One well-documented phenomenon is that women are evaluated on their past accomplishments, while men are evaluated more on future potential. Perhaps one of the most famous demonstrations of this was from MIT professor Danielle Lee, who conducted a study in 2022 called Potential and the Gender Promotion Gap. Her research found that while women scored higher performance ratings overall than the men in the study, they received 8.3% lower ratings of potential than men. And because of this, the women in the study on average were 14% less likely to be promoted than their male colleagues. Wild, right? So what does that mean in terms of the first rung on the career ladder, the jump from individual contributor to manager? Well, if men are largely evaluated based on potential, that means that to become a first-time manager, they have to convince the powers that be of their ability to be a good manager. While for a woman trying to become a manager, they need to show their bosses they're up for the job by pointing to past accomplishments. But if you've never been a manager, how do you convince someone to let you manage using that logic? I'm not saying that a promotion to manager for men is at all guaranteed or easy, but proving that you're a good manager without the experience to back it up is a completely different ballgame than convincing someone to invest in your potential. So what can you do about it? Bad news, you're not going to solve societal woes. But in this specific instance, one way to counteract this bias is to work with it, not against it. Say you want to become the manager of your 3-person marketing team. Instead of telling your boss, I think I'd be a really good leader, come in with past accomplishments that speak to the specific responsibilities you'd have. For example, you could say, I know that a large part of our job is hitting our web traffic targets. Last year, I updated our SEO strategy to increase web traffic by 7%. And I have 3 new ideas for how the team can modify that strategy again to increase traffic this year. Even so, these tactics probably won't remove the bias from the process. So let's take a look at another reason behind the broken rung, one you can actually do something about: a lack of experience capital. What is experience capital and why does it matter? Experience capital is the diverse knowledge and skills that you build on the job. The best experience capital is varied. It's built not from doing the same tasks over and over again, but instead from learning a wide breadth of information. How do you build it? A few ways. Through the actual day-to-day of your job, through learning and development opportunities provided by your company, or even through watching colleagues handle tough challenges themselves. Oh, and experience capital is vital to continuing to climb the ladder. Without picking up a wide set of skills and knowledge, it's much harder to succeed in a new role. Remember earlier when I mentioned that only half of your earning potential is based on your education? The other half comes from experience capital. Another way to build experience capital is by working in a variety of roles, especially earlier in your career, where you can build up a repertoire of skills. But you don't have to move companies every 18 months to achieve this either. Tackling new projects at one supportive company is a great way to build skills without burning bridges and without onboarding. But let's say you're already locked in and you still want that promotion. How do you get around the lack of experience capital? 2 tips here. First, build a network of supporters. No, you don't need 1 million followers on social media to counteract the effects of the broken rung. But it is invaluable to have 3 to 5 people who will fight for you, especially when you're not in the room. They could be mentors or sponsors, etc. The second tip, if you're early in your career, optimize for company over position. Do not underestimate the impact of working at a good company that values you and your career growth over the starting title or salary. For example, let's say you have 2 job offers, one at company A and one at company B. Company A is offering you $75,000 and a fancy markets analyst title. Company B is only offering you $60,000 and you get the less fun data servicing title. But in your research, you find that there's a lot more opportunities for growth at Company B, and the contacts you know there have been promoted 4 times in the last 5 years. In the interview process, they also highlighted how they want to find the right job for you, and they encourage employees to pursue job changes internally before leaving the company. With Company A, you're not so confident that you'll get the same career opportunities. Despite the huge difference in starting salary, you could be better off going with Company B, as you'd have more opportunities to keep growing beyond that initial pay and title. By the end of 5 years, your career could look way better despite starting off a little worse. Look, I know there are going to be some haters here that have plenty of reasons why this broken rung phenomenon doesn't exist at their company or why it's BS, but the reality is that women are getting promoted less, regardless of the reason behind it. Just take a look at the research. The broken rung sucks, and it doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon. But these tips are a really good place to start to avoid getting stuck on the bottom rung yourself. So, is there anything I missed? Any tips that have helped you in your career? Or do you disagree with this take entirely? Either way, I want to know. Let us know in the comments.